As Father Jim said earlier at the beginning of the service, today is the first Sunday of Advent. And he also mentioned that Advent has a bit of a double personality. On one hand, we are remembering the time before Christ's first coming. We are also looking to his second Advent, or his second coming. You may notice that we're wearing purple stoles and we have purple paraments on all the altar and everything. This is because it's it's a penitential nature to it. We're seeing if we're ready. We're trying to decide if we're prepared for his second coming. Are we living a life that anticipates his coming? This is not just a time of looking back. It is also a time of looking forward. I used to really look forward to birthdays. That's before they started coming quite so fast. I remember my fourth birthday very little. But what I do remember is that I knew I would have one, but I did not know exactly when it was. I had a rather poor concept of time at that age. Somehow I began asking every day, is this my birthday? Perhaps I knew that it came sometime after Christmas, since I'm born in March. I don't know, but every day I would ask my mother if today was my birthday, and every day she would say no. I'm not sure that I would have that kind of persistence today. For example, I love to order books online. I order a lot of my books because most of the local bookstores don't really have what I need for my classes. I have memberships at several online bookstores. Some of them have free 2-day or 3-day shipping for what I order. It is amazing how difficult it is to wait those 2 or 3 days. And it's not just me. It's not like I don't have anything else to read. I have plenty of books to read, and I don't need the books right now. It's just my natural impatience. And apparently I'm not the only one who has this problem, because a lot of sellers now are offering same day or even looking into same hour delivery. We are a nation that is notoriously impatient. We are called not only to wait, but also to watch for his coming. The idea here is of a century posted on the wall. We are to be alert and ready. Today, as we are gathering here together, we are in a sense watching together. Looking around, we see many symbols and images. We don't have them just for their beauty, although they are beautiful. They are meant to focus our minds on what is to come. And there is a lot to distract us in this world. There are false teachers and false prophets who will give us easy answers and a comfortable faith. There are the endless temptations to follow our own vices and to engage in the vices of others. There is a threat of being shamed for following Christ. Many will fall, but we who stand firm will enter into God's rest. We will see not only our salvation, but the salvation of all creation. So we may find ourselves at times wondering, when will this happen? After all, it's been 2,000 years. Has God forgotten? Will he ever return? There is a good reason why we can't figure out Christ's return. God doesn't want us to know. In fact, Jesus said that the angels didn't know, and even Jesus, in his human form, did not know. This may seem strange to us that the Son of God did not know when he would return. But this is part of the veiling of his deity. For a while he set aside his ability to know everything in order to enter into our humanity fully as one of us. The point is that the Son himself did not know, then we have no business asking. There are, from time to time, those who claim they have found the time of Christ's return. They go on TV and they write books. They have complex mathematical equations. Maybe they walk around with sandwich boards. They are greatly mistaken. Each time one of these would-be prophets announces that he has found the new date, thousands are taken in. We are warned not to fall for their ploys. Perhaps we're now asking why God has not deemed to tell us when he will return. I have no doubt that it is because of his wisdom and our weakness. Let's face it, how many of us would be tempted to slack off spiritually until the very last minute? How many others would sow their wild oats until the time was near? No, God wants us always to be on watch, always being prepared for his return. St. Ambrose said that it was not to our advantage to know. No, it is to our advantage to be ignorant, that through ignorance we might fear, through watchfulness be corrected. For the soldier does not know how to watch in the camp unless he knows the war is at hand. Scripture does tell us something about what the world will be like when he comes. In the gospel passage, Christ gives two examples. The first one is from the time of Noah's flood. Jesus said at the time of Noah's flood, people were oblivious to what was happening. They were having parties. They were marrying. They were going about their daily life. They were totally caught off guard by the flood. To me, this seems rather odd. Here was this guy, Noah, going around building a huge floating box, proclaiming the coming judgment, and they were still caught completely by surprise. I think there is a lesson to be learned about evangelism here. I've often seen theories that make evangelism just about mathematics. If we introduce one person to the Lord, and that person introduces another person, eventually the whole world will be one. I'm all for spreading the gospel, and I'm committed to it. But the problem is that many will reject Jesus, just like in the days of Noah. Many will not believe us. We still share and pray for God's Spirit to fill the hearts of all people. But we probably will face more rejections than we do successes. One of the reasons that it will be difficult to discern when the Lord will return is that life will be going on as it always has. Perhaps people will by large not be looking for it. No one will be saying, we're going to party like it's 1999. To further make the point, Jesus draws from the contemporary culture of his day. He says that when he comes, they will be going about their daily business. We may not relate to the illustrations given here. We may not be as familiar with agriculture or the life of the mill. Perhaps today we would say 2 people were trading and one was taken, or 2 people were in a meeting and one was taken. The point here is that when Christ comes, it will take everyone by surprise. Some read this passage and see it teaching of a rapture of the saints. For years, I just took for granted that this was the case. But I'm not so sure about that anymore. This is a relatively new idea. Started in about the 19th century. It is mostly popular in the United States. And it's become under increased scrutiny in recent years. Historically, the church does not teach of a rapture, followed by a later coming of Christ. In fact, in Matthew 20, in verse 27 of the same chapter, which we did not read today, Matthew says that when Christ returns, everyone will know. Furthermore, we are not told why some are taken away. It may be for judgment as easily as it is for going to heaven. So the question now comes, how do we wait? We have many ways to wait. If I'm waiting to get my hair cut, I may peruse through a magazine, and just sit in the chair casually look through things. That is a very passive way of waiting. That is how many Christians wait for the second coming. If a man is waiting to ask a woman to marry him, he may work extra hours to raise the money for a ring. He may put hours into planning what he wants to say and when he wants to propose. It is a very active type of waiting. We are expected to wait in this active way. Not like me waiting to get my hair cut. In the epistle today, Paul gives us some advice about how to wait in this active way. First, he tells us, be awake. I don't know about you, but in the last few weeks of summer, I find myself getting rather lethargic. Perhaps it is the heat that causes my metabolism to slow. I really don't know, but I move slower and I sleep more. Sometimes we get lethargic in our spiritual lives. We lose that dedication and enthusiasm that we once had in the spring of our faith. We're not creative as we once were, and full of energy. Everything was beautiful when we were first Christians. Now, perhaps life is shining hard on us like the hot August sun. We want to curl up in a hammock and take it easy. But we are told not to fall into the summer sleep. Next, Paul tells us to cast off the works of darkness and put on the armor of light. Paul here builds on the image of sleeping. What Paul is saying is that we're to put off the vices of the old nature, of spiritual darkness, and put on Christian virtues found in the light of Christ. In fact, he goes on as far to say that we are to put on Christ. The image here is of putting on armor before our daily battle, the day's fighting. We are to let Christ be the armor that we wear. It is only in the power of Christ that we can gain victory over our fallen natures. What this means is that we are to be conformed to the image of Christ. We begin this process when we come to Christ, and we will reach it in completion at the resurrection. As examples, Paul gives a short list of vices he calls the works of darkness. We see 3 sets of pairs. So let's take a look at them. The first pair is carousing and drunkenness. This first vice speaks of those who seek to lose themselves in escapist activity. And the idea here with carousing is an uninhibited revelry. Out of control party may be the way that we would talk about it today. But perhaps it could be another activity in which we lose ourselves to an unhealthy degree. Perhaps, and I'm going to step on toes here, perhaps it could be shopping or sports. Perhaps it could be thrill-seeking activities. Maybe none of these are what tempt us, but we are all tempted to lose ourselves in something. The second work of darkness in this pair is drunkenness. Now, this is not really talking about having a little bit too much to drink and accidentally getting drunk, although I think Paul would frown on that also. But this probably refers to binge drinking. This is the person who seeks to lose control through chemicals. They seek to anesthetize themselves. I have to admit that looking at these, I'm tempted to say, these are sins of young people. I'm well past the age of partying and drinking games. That is not to say that I was ever tempted by these in the first place. But we must not be too quick to look past these. We're talking about escapist activities, and we are all tempted in some way or another. The second two examples talk about how we use our sexuality. However, I'm tempted to think that there is a deeper meaning here. It is about how we treat other people. Both of the vices mentioned here are about using other people. Whether it is a serial adulterer or someone with an unhealthy curiosity, there are people who see other people only as a means to self-gratification. Perhaps there are other ways that we do this. When I was a child, I grew up in a neighborhood with widely diverging economic means. And there were some kids who had more than others. There was a kid who had all the latest video games. There was a kid who had hundreds of VHS movies. And there was a great deal of sensitivity and being honest about why we were friends with each other. The worst thing that someone could say to us is that you're just using the kid down the street for what he has that you don't. Paul calls us here to be sincere and honest in our treatment of others. The last couple of vices here are what the English Standard Version calls quarreling and jealousy. Now, this is not talking about Uncle Joe's tirades about politics around the dinner table. What this is talking about is this is not also talking about what you feel when you see your neighbor's new fishing boat or car. Both of these advices are about those who try to dominate others. We live in a world that is dominated by the top dog mentality. As men, we grow up with a nearly mythic image of the alpha male, the guy who always comes out on top. I actually read a book recently written by a behavioral scientist who says that scientists now believe that the most advanced human beings are not the alphas, but those who work collaboratively. As Christians, we look to Christ, who came to serve. The quarreler is always jockeying for position. He is the guy in the office who is forming alliances, who is always worried about who is on his side, and will do whatever it takes to make sure that happens. The person who is jealous is a person who has failed to gain power. And he is not just envious of others. He is zealous to see them come to harm. Maybe he gossips or schemes, but he wants to take someone down a peg. What Paul is saying here is we should not always be jockeying for position. We must remember the words of Christ, that the first will be last and the last will be first. Back to my birthday story from a few minutes ago. One morning, I asked my mother if it was my birthday yet. I expected just another disappointment, but not this time. She said yes, and I was so excited. After weeks, possibly months of waiting, it had finally come. I had almost given up, but it was my birthday at last. Amen.
Born as a little baby under a wonder star, like us, crying, he takes his first breath, held by his mother held breast, close to her beating heart. Jesus, try.